Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of BSD Synergy, entitled Land of the FreeBSD. I'm your host Mason Egger, and let's just jump right into it. So this week's episode is going to be pretty interesting. We're going to be focusing a lot on FreeBSD. This is going to be the beginning of one of many episodes that I'm going to do on FreeBSD. What I'm planning on doing with this channel is that I'm going to dedicate probably 2 to 4 episodes a piece, in the beginning at least, to all 4 of the main BSD flavors. So we're starting off with FreeBSD. This will give me a chance to go over some of the basics of it, kind of explain a little bit of the history and how it was built, and then really focus on some of the key aspects of it. FreeBSD started as a fork of BSDNet 2 back in 1993. They eventually had gotten tired of waiting on the 386 release to come out, so they decided to fork their own and go their own way. FreeBSD is actually a fork of an original BSD system. Their main focus is the server environment. FreeBSD aims to be your server that can do everything that you ask of it. They also focus on commodity hardware portability because they want to be able to not only be the server that you want, but they want it to be able to run on whatever hardware you want to actually run on. Some of the notable things about FreeBSD is that it still runs on a lot of weird architectures. FreeBSD is currently supported in AMD 64, i386, IA64, PowerPC and PowerPC 64, and even Spark 64. So you can run this on quite a few machines. The likelihood of you coming across a machine that FreeBSD does not support is a lot less likely than coming across one that it does support. So one of the great things about FreeBSD is actually the community. I've met quite a few of the FreeBSD community people, and I have to say they are some of the nicest people that I have ever met. They are extremely friendly and always willing to answer your questions. Whether you're an expert with an expert level question, or you're a beginner who just wants to know, they're always willing to help push you in the right direction and get you to know what is going on in the community and the operating system that you want to use. They're probably the most outgoing of the BSD groups. They will actively want you to change to FreeBSD. Unlike the OpenBSD people who they built the operating system for them, and that's what they're going to do. And if you use it, great, we love to have you on it, but if not, you're not hurting their feelings. FreeBSD is probably one of the most active recruiting BSDs out there. If you want to get on a project in FreeBSD, they actually have a mentor program where you will get trained in all of the things you need to do for FreeBSD with a person who mentors you, and they are actually responsible for your code. They will look over your code when you go to check it in. They will give you advice and tips, and it's a great way to get to know and get to be a part of the community, but also get to learn and understand how FreeBSD works. And they, it's good to know they don't just turn you loose and say have at the source code. They actually train you and they take the time to help you understand what you need to do to make this operating system better, rather than just saying, oh, you've got some code here, we'll pull that into the base system, we'll pull that into the base system. That's how you get garbage in your code base. And they do a really good job of trying to maintain the amount of garbage that gets pulled in, which is actually 0 to none. Mostly due to that absolutely great system of, hey, we want people to work on our code base, let's actually train them in it, instead of just going, oh, read these documentation. That being said, FreeBSD probably does have one of the best documentations in the BSD land, and probably even in the open source land, that I have seen. It kind of comes on par with the OpenBSD. I would have to say that maybe OpenBSD and FreeBSD, in my mind, have relatively similar documentation. I find the FreeBSD to be a little bit more interesting. It's not quite so cut and dry. That being said, I do love OpenBSD, so don't get me wrong on that. But they have a really good book, and they've done a really good job at bringing all the knowledge together in one place to where people can easily access it and get the answers to their problems. FreeBSD also works really well in virtual machines. That's actually the virtual machine that I use in most of my cloud operating systems. Most of my servers that I run in the cloud are FreeBSD based. All of my web servers are, my development servers are FreeBSD, my Saltmaster is a FreeBSD server, and it's a great server to have in the cloud. It also runs on a surprisingly good amount of SD card images for, say, embedded hardware. So some of the SD card images they support are the BeagleBone, Qbox Hummingbird, Gumstick, Raspberry Pi, Panda board, WAND board, pretty much a lot of different embedded boards that you can imagine. I'm pretty sure it's also going to run on Minoboard soon, because the pfSense people are moving over to Minoboard, as I found out from them at the Linux Festival. And with them doing that, and since pfSense is FreeBSD, it pretty much means that, FreeBSD is going to be running on Minoboard. So if you're interested in open hardware, check out the Minoboard. It's going to be pretty awesome. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the nifty features of FreeBSD. Now, I'm not going to be able to tell you every feature there is. If you want to see that, you can go to freebsd.org/features.html, and you can find out all of the features that FreeBSD has to offer. But some of the ones that stand out to me are the fact that, one, it's massively scalable. It can go up to 80 cores, probably more now since the last time I looked that up. Terabytes of RAM. It is a power horse that can just do anything you ask of it when it comes to scale. Now, my favorite feature, and one that's definitely going to be getting its own dedicated video, are the FreeBSD jails. Jails are pretty much the precursor to all of this container stuff that's happening in Linux land. This low-level virtualization concept was actually originally introduced in FreeBSD way back in 1998. They had this kind of low-level virtualization, and that's really cool. They do some really nifty things, and I'm not going to spoil it for you today, but you can guarantee that there's going to be an episode on jails upcoming in the future. Another really interesting feature that I may or may not do a video on later, if you want me to, leave me a comment below and I will definitely consider it, is the Beehive hypervisor. Now, BSD decided that they were going to build their own hypervisor, and it's the BSD hypervisor called Beehive. Really clever puns. And after talking with some people recently, I have found out that the new Beehive hypervisor is now going to be supporting VNC natively. So that means that you are going to finally be able to run Windows in your hypervisor if you so choose to do so. Disclaimer, BSD Synergy does not condone or recommend running Windows in any way, shape, or form. And another really nifty tool about FreeBSD is that you actually can run almost all of your native Linux packages on it. Instead of doing a virtual machine system for the Linux emulation, FreeBSD is actually fully ABI compliant, and it's compatible. So you can run in the Linux emulation mode almost any Linux binary that you pretty much want to. Now, I haven't really got a chance to test this out yet, and who knows, maybe we'll do that in another video. If you want to see these things, comment below and we'll check them out. So where in my world am I going to see FreeBSD? Well, out there in the wild with all the consumer land products and such, you will see things such as Netflix and the PlayStation. I've seen that PlayStation 3, 4, and the Vita are all being run on FreeBSD. Other things you may see are Apple. The Mac OS X terminal is userland from FreeBSD. You'll even see it in everybody's favorite app, WhatsApp. Okay, and now we're going to go ahead and go through an installation of FreeBSD. I am going to cut out parts here or there just to speed up the length of this video. So here we go. Okay, so now we get to see welcome to the FreeBSD system. Would you like to install? Yes, we're going to install. And we're going to continue with our default key map. And for the host name, we're going to call this BSD Synergy. And what do we want to install? We want to install the docs, the additional documentation, games. I don't want games. lib32 compatibility libraries. We can also install the ports tree, which isn't something I've gone over yet, but I will definitely be going over soon, probably in my next video. But this is basically where the source code for installing things exists, or the system source code. I don't really think we need that, but I am going to, install the docs because I like having additional documentation. So now you get the choice between using automatic UFS or automatic ZFS. And this is guided root on ZFS. I've actually never used that before, so let's see what it does. Probing devices, and we're going to install. And this is doing a whole thing, installing ZFS. This is installing our Z pools and our disks and the pool name and all those really cool things. I'll probably end up doing a video on ZFS later too. And now we can choose. We can stripe with no redundancy. We can mirror. We can RAID Z1, RAID Z2, RAID Z3. We're going to go with stripe. In ZFS, we're going to go with that hard disk. Not enough disk space selected. 0 is less than 1 minimum. Change selection. Last chance. Are you sure you want to destroy the current contents of Ada? Yes, I do. So now some of the things that you can add on at the base installation are local unbound, which is a local caching validating resolver. This is actually a remake of bind, DNS. Local unbound is a remake of DNS bind. SSHD, usually you want your SSH installed. Mouse D, don't need it, it's only a terminal. NTPD, not really worrying about that right now, but if you want to set up an NTP server. Power D, adjusting your CPU frequency dynamically. And then dump dev, enable kernel dumps. And then when you like to add users to the installed system now, no, for the sake of this video, I'm not going to. And then we're going to exit. And installation is finished. It's going to open up a shell. You'd like to make any final modifications. It gives me that option. I don't want to. And we're going to reboot. And I just removed the CD, so we should boot back into our new FreeBSD system. Oh, and ZFS is enabled. You can see it right there on the Bootstrap loader. It's so cool being able to boot from ZFS. Definitely going to have to do a video on that later. And here we go. Root. There we go. ifconfig. And we have a internet address of 10.0.2.15. We can get that. We can ping google.com. We got it. We have internet access. Okay, so a few interesting things about the BSD operating system. So one of the first things you're going to see now, and even though I don't need to be using this, the command is not found. BSDs, which is one of my favorite things about the BSDs, is that they install at a very minimal operating system. So minimal that they don't even give you sudo. They don't want you to have sudo. So if you want sudo, you have to install it. So if you want to install sudo, we can use something simple as the pkg installer, which is the package installer for BSD. Now, if you know anything about BSD, you know that they typically in the past, didn't like package systems. They were really more focused on the ports tree, which is basically building all of your software from source. But they've eventually come around, and most of your BSDs, I think all of them now actually, do have some sort of package manager. They're kind of moving away a little bit from building everything from source if you don't absolutely need to. I don't need to build sudo from source, so why should I do that? But they still offer that option, and some of the other BSDs, it's still kind of common to build most of your stuff from source if you want to. A while back, about 2 or 3 years, they rebuilt PKG in FreeBSD, and it's now, I think, PKG-NG. I don't think it's called that anymore. I think they just went back to the old name, but they basically completely rehauled the package system, and now on FreeBSD, I have to say, FreeBSD probably has the most well-maintained and easily usable packaging manager of all of the BSDs. So we're just going to go ahead and install sudo. The package management tool is not yet installed on your system. Do you want to fetch it? Yes, I do. So it knows that I don't even have it. You don't even have the package manager on there by default. You do have the ports tree, but you don't even have the package manager. So, there are still a lot of people that use source as their main installation for FreeBSD and for most of your BSDs, and there's nothing wrong with that. But so there's not even a package manager on here by default. That kind of tells you the difference. In Linux land, everything's a package. You only build from source if you have to. And in BSD land, it's entirely different. Most of your things are coming from source, and you build and you use a package, when you really I don't feel like being inconvenienced by that. And, the dynamic's kind of changing. I think they're kind of meeting in the middle a little bit now. We're going to install this, yes. So it gets all of its dependencies and installs. Now we have sudo. If I could spell. There we go. Now we have sudo. A couple of other interesting things about the BSD system is that you don't have Vim, but you do have VI, and this is not your typical VI alias to Vim. This is VI. This is the original VI. So I have VI. That's pretty cool. So as you can see by my clever ls-l, the default shell in FreeBSD is actually the C shell. All hail the mighty C shell. So it's a little bit different. Most people are used to having bash. And now they have this. So some of the things you'll notice is that there's very little on this system. We don't have Python. We don't have GCC. We do have Clang, however. Interesting fact, GCC is not the default compiler on FreeBSD. It is actually Clang. So let's install a web server on here. So for my typical Linux friends, we're going to do pkg install httpd. Oh, that isn't there. Well, let's just go ahead and pkg install Apache. Apache's not there either. So they actually have a slightly different naming schema. They actually include version, and that's one of the things that the pkg package manager does that Yum does better, or some other ones, is that it'll typically kind of figure out what you're talking about. This one really doesn't do that. So if I want to actually install Apache, well, first, if I wanted to search for it, I can search for it, and that's all the Apache stuff, and that's quite a lot. So we can do pkg install Apache 24, and I will be able to install Apache 24. Also good to know that the groups are www and the user is www, not your typical Apache. And here's some, warnings about what you've done. So let's go ahead and start this service. So service Apache 24 start. And there it goes. It tells you that we cannot start this because it's not in our RC file. The RC file is pretty much the main settings file and controller for your operating system, and it lets you know what is actually enabled and what you can run. So if we're enabled for us to actually start this after installation, we actually have to add it to our rc.conf. So we go down here to the end and we do Apache 24. Dang it. Keep missing the keys. Let's go ahead and start it now after we've changed that file. Apache 24 start. And it went ahead and started. It does complain a little bit about could not reliably being able to determine the server's FQDN and all that stuff. That really doesn't actually affect us right now in any way as Apache is running. Let's try to wget the address. 0.0.1:80, and we don't have wget like usual. So let's actually build wget from scratch. Instead of just doing a pkg install, let's be a little bit more traditional FreeBSD and let us actually decide to build it from scratch. And it is in user ports ftp/wget. So cd/user ports ftp wget. And there we go, we've got that. So let's do a make install. And now we're going to build wget. And it's asking me if I want to do all this stuff. We'll go ahead and say yes. It's getting the tar, native language support for gmake. So it will also, now this is one of the pitfalls you have to watch out for. And it's not really a pitfall, it makes sense. But if you're trying to build a big package and you haven't installed anything else yet and that package doesn't exist, every dependency also gets built. And I might do it in my next video to show you just how long it is, or maybe as an extra video. But building Vim, for instance, from scratch takes a long time, especially when you don't have that many resources to allocate towards your machine. Right now, I've really only allocated 2 gigs of RAM and 1 processor on this. I am running it inside a VirtualBox again because, again, like I said last video, it's much easier for me to capture everything that's going on whenever I'm doing it inside a VirtualBox with the Open Broadcaster software than if I was doing it with, another machine or something. I also don't currently have any other machines, so for now, VirtualBox is what you're going to get. It'll work pretty much for what we need for everything, basic demos. Whenever I do the performance testing, I will probably find another machine. I have a PowerEdge T310 sitting behind me with some Xeon, with a Xeon processor in it, and I may use that for the for the performance testing. So we'll see what happens with that. But for now, VirtualBox is working out just fine. As you can see, like even something like as simple as wget, it's taking a little while to compile. It's not a quick process. If you want to do stuff from ports and you want to be able to flag any option and do anything you want, it's great. And being able to compile from source really does bring you a lot of added advantages. It's compiled for your machine. Like, it has taken in effect your hardware, your architecture, everything, and it's compiled it for you compared to just getting like your typical binary and installing it. So there are the advantages of it. Just know that it takes a little while longer. And also, as you noticed earlier, you have to know where everything is at. You have to know that it's Apache 24. You can actually look up the packages that are inside of the FreeBSD ports on the internet, and that's usually what I do. Is there's a package repository for everything they offer, and I just search for it in there usually, and I get it and I install it. The search feature is good, and it probably would have been easier for me to use had I not been using this VirtualBox terminal. But that's just life. If I'd been actually SSH'd in, that would have been relatively simple. But yeah, this is wget. It's taking a while. Building from source takes a while, but it is kind of neat to watch. I have to say, I like watching all this stuff go by and trying to figure it out and read it and understand it as it's flying past my screen. It's kind of a hobby of mine. Okay, so now we have wget installed, so let's go ahead and see what's on our web server. And there we go, we've just wget our page, and let's cat it, and you have to spell it right. And there it is, in typical FreeBSD fashion, and when you do it on CentOS, you get the fancy Apache page with all your CSS and all that, a lot of fluff and stuff you don't really need, which kind of sometimes describes basic Linux installs. But with FreeBSD, it's true to itself. It's got 3 tags, HTML body and H1, I guess just for correctness. It did that, and then it works. That's all you get. So the HTTP page for Apache always makes me laugh because it's so minimal and it's just like the operating system. So there you go. You have a basic one. Another interesting thing that you definitely need to know is if you want to edit the configuration file settings for this, it's not in your normal etc spot. Some of the problems you see in Linux is, where's my thing installed? Where's the config files? Is it /etc? Is it in /opt? Who knows? Where to go? FreeBSD decided that they were going to do a common installation place. So that's what they did. And that's what it is in /user/local. User local. And then, it's usually, if you have like configuration files and stuff, they're usually in etc. And now if I cd into Apache 24, it's right there, and then vi httpd.conf, and there you go. I have my typical Apache config file that is ready for us to use. And with that being said, that's pretty much all I have to show for you on this week's demo. I challenge everybody to go out and try a FreeBSD server. You can try it in your favorite cloud place. AWS, I think Rackspace has a FreeBSD image. I don't know. DigitalOcean, one of my favorite places personally, has a really easy FreeBSD thing to use, and it's really quick to get set up and going. So go out there, build yourself a server. Install some things from ports, but also do some package stuff. One thing you'll learn from ports is if it's a big package or it doesn't already have all of its dependencies installed, and one of those is a big package, it can generally take a very long time. So really nothing much to worry about with that. But, just be wary that it may take a while. You are building from source. Now, if you have more resources on your machine, then it's going to go a whole lot faster. My rinky-dink little VM over here with its 2 gigs of RAM and 1 virtual CPU was doing the best that it could, but it really, it wasn't doing all that well. So go ahead and do that, but don't get discouraged by the time. Remember that you are building this for your system, and you are getting all of this custom things. Whether or not, the binary may or may not work better, but that's one of the things that brings in better performance is that when you have code built for your system, built for your architecture, it just does better. That's just the way it is. So that's really nifty, and so use this to your advantage. Now, you don't need to build everything from source. As a person who built Python from source and sat there for probably like 6 hours, it's a really big package and you don't really need to do that. But if you're interested in, adding some flags to Apache, there's some really nifty Apache flags. I think it even has like an LDAP thing like in there. I don't even know. You can turn all these flags off and on through the build process, and you get a custom software built for you, built for your hardware. And that's really hard to beat. And that's where, this is where a lot of the performance stuff is really coming from, is the tuning that happens during the compilation process. So if you like this video this week, go ahead and give me a like. And, if you want to tell me something or, give me some tips or some show ideas or anything, go ahead and leave me a comment below. I was looking at my list, and if I'm actually going to split up these BSDs into 2 to 4, maybe more, depending on how much I really want to do it, I've got like almost a year's worth of shows ready to go. So if you give me a good idea and I like it, it's like, oh, shiny object, I will probably end up doing that idea because it got my attention, and hey, let's talk about it now while people that are watching the show want to watch it. If I don't get any more ideas, I'll just keep trekking on. Trust me, eventually I will get through all this stuff and I'll need some suggestions, or who knows what'll happen. So if you think you have friends that'll like this show, send this on over to them, ask them to subscribe. I'm really not doing this for anything other than my learning experience and to help educate you. But knowing that that people actually enjoy the show and that they come back to it every week, that's a good feeling for me. So go ahead and do that if you've got any friends, and if not, I will see you next week. Have a good week, everybody.